depending when you hear this, very big news. My coaching program for 20 coaches and entrepreneurs to start a successful podcast, grow it, use it to nurture their business is now open today, on Monday, October 14th. But the doors close on Friday, let me double check, I think it's the 18th, Friday the 18th. So if you want to come in and you've been thinking, I want to start a podcast, I want to find a new way to maybe grow my business that isn't just social media, and I want to get more impact, I want to feel like I'm making a difference, I invite you to join Podcast Alchemy. It's a 12-week program where I am working directly with you and other creators and entrepreneurs, just 20, so it's not a big group, to help you do this. And it's a mix of messaging, calls, workshops, everything you need to be able to make your podcast go live in January 2025, which is the month of the highest downloads. So if this gets excited for you and you want one of the 20 spots, you want to go to herfirst3years.com and you'll see there's a start a podcast section in the top navigation menu, and that's where you can get more details. So I invite you to do this. Again, depending on when you listen to this, there may or may not be spots, I don't know, but if you hear it and you want it, go there. Let's now get into this episode. I had a different episode planned for today, but then I was thinking, what are the two things that we struggle with the most as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as creators? What are the two things that if you solve these, things get a lot easier in your business, mentally, emotionally, physically, and easier not just in terms of sales, but also it becomes more meaningful for you. So this episode is about one small, tiny thing that you can do that can help you with impact and also can help you with sales. If you look at your business, whether you're brand new or you've done it for years, do you feel like you are having the impact you want? Or do you feel like something's missing? It could be the hustling, it could be the sales, it could be the fulfillment, but do you feel like one of those things is maybe missing? I'm going to share with you today one choice I made that attracted clients for me. It gave me an incredible sense of purpose, and it connected me with some amazing people that I never would have met otherwise. Now, this one decision is not for everyone, but it is a kind of decision that everyone can make. There was an episode on my first podcast, Feel Good Naked, called something like Slow Burner Moves. It was an episode I completely forgot about, but I had a conversation with one of my former podcast clients, Kelsey, on the last episode here, and she brought it up. And she brought it up because she said, when I heard that episode, it gave me the push and the motivation to go forward and do something that I always wanted to do, but I had a lot of doubt around, which was starting her podcast. And it's the idea that every day we make small choices that have the capacity to put us on one path or block us from another. It's the idea that we make these small choices that either open us up to opportunities and expansion or shut us down. And it's not to say it's right or wrong or anything like that, because I fully believe that not every day needs to be about growth. Sometimes it's just about being a little bit comfortable. But it's important to be aware of this, because when you make these small choices in one direction, you're signaling to the world, to the universe, to people you know, that I am open and ready for this. And you can want it with all your heart and your mind, but until you take these small actions, it does not happen for you. I'm going to give you a story here. In 2020, I talk about how my business crumbled. I had a wellness business. I was an in-person personal trainer, nutritionist, a behavior mindset person. I worked with people in London. I ran fitness classes. And overnight, because of COVID, I lost everything. I lost all my income. I lost all my clients. This is a business that I had built up over 7 years in 2 countries, first in New York, in the US, and then in London, UK. I was at this position of crap. What do I do? what can I do? Because there's nothing that I can really, in terms of how my business was running before in person, I can't do anything and I don't know when I can. So what do I do? And I sat with that decision for, I think this was March, this happened end of March. And then early June was when I came up with this choice of, there's something I always wanted to do. That slow burner move, something that I never felt I was ready for, that I thought maybe didn't make sense for me yet, but something that always called me. And that was starting my podcast. And it really kind of felt like this strange, I don't know how to explain, like this strange sense of relief. You'll feel this too when you think about like your slow burner move. What's the one tiny choice that will put you on a pathway that's different? I felt this relief, this lack of resistance when I decided to do it. And so I'm creating this show, and within a month, I have online clients. Now, that for me was kind of shocking because I didn't have an online business. But what I had was people coming to me saying, hey, do you do this online? And it allowed me to really grow in a different, completely new way. Now, me making that decision to start was not based on, I want to have new clients, even though I think it's an amazing way to do it. It was not based on, I want to grow an online business, even though, again, it's an amazing way to do it. It was, I feel this calling. I want to do this small, tiny thing and see what happens. And it has transformed everything in my business. And it has very much allowed me to have a life which is a lot less glued to the screen. So when you're thinking of the small burner choices, think about what is the thing that you have been putting your feet down on, the thing that you have not been doing, the tiny, tiny little action that you know would take you in a different direction, but you don't feel ready for it. My goal is by the end of this episode, I want to take you to that point where you are going to do it, where it's going to inspire you. When we're talking about slow burner moves, they can also work against you. So there might be small choices you're making right now that are keeping you trapped. It could be, as there's an amazing phrase that my friend Carla says all the time for her business, which is she's really about killing your darlings, right? These are the businesses or the offers or the services in your business that are not performing but taking a lot of your energy. So that's a small burner choice, to continue to run something that is running you to the ground or not bringing you in money or really emotionally doesn't feel aligned. That's also a small burner choice because it's keeping you stuck. So think about that first. So what is the thing that is maybe keeping you in this position, keeping you not going forward? Because it's not always the choice to do something new. Sometimes it's a choice to stop doing something old. Now, let's get into why we don't do the moves which are moving us in a new direction. Procrastination is probably the biggest reason, is you feel doubt, or you want to stay in your comfort zone, or you're not quite sure how to do. You've got a lot of uncertainty, a lot on your plate. So you're not ready for any sort of expansion. That's okay. I believe in people growing in different stages. It doesn't always need to be a straight up incline line, but you do want to be aware of it and know that the choice to feel doubt, the choice to stay comfortable, the choice to delay doing something that's calling to you is still a choice, and it's still an action. It's just one that keeps you stuck. And if you're listening to this, you probably know, because it's the same thing as like the blog you wrote that sits in drafts, the book you started but didn't finish, the message you started to write on WhatsApp and didn't send. All of these are symbols of delayed action, and all of these signal to you, to your mind, that I am not ready to move forward. And then they also signal to the world, to the universe. I know you can be woo-woo or not, but this is the reality, is like when you start taking action, that's when you start showing the world and the people in it that you are open and ready for something new. It starts with you. It doesn't just come to you by luck. Okay? When I think about my podcast and all the growth and amazing people I've met, they didn't come to me just out of nowhere. I had to make this first action of starting this show and signaling that this is what I'm here for. So think about that when you think about procrastinating, what it's costing you to do it. And while it keeps you safe, and while there is a time to do it, if you've been there for very long, maybe think about, what's something that can get me out of this. I really understand this, because the reality is that when When 2020 happened, when pandemic happened, before that, I wasn't happy in my business. I had been doing it for 7 years, but I was really burnt out. I was tired of exchanging time for money, and I was really exhausted with the way I was growing the business, and I really dreamed of something different. I sat on this idea of a podcast for 2 years, and I don't know that I actually would have started it if everything hadn't happened in 2020. When I think about that, it's me procrastinating. I was afraid that things wouldn't happen for me. I was afraid that, I don't know, like nobody would listen, that who would I be to do this? I had all these fears. I was afraid of extra work. But the moment of moving forward is the moment where you're going to see the change you are hoping for. This is where we get into another block, which is it's too small to make a difference. Because by now you probably have thought about a small or maybe a slightly bigger slow burner move you could do, but you don't know if it would actually make a difference for you. You feel like, well, what will really change? Slow burner means it's like a little flick of light that really rages up and grows over time because it's the indicator to you, to yourself, to the world that you want more, that you're ready for more. There's a quote I always talk about that most people have heard and they interpret one way, but I interpret another. It's this idea that the universe will only give you as much as you can handle. And we usually think about that as it doesn't, like, a lot of people think of this as, oh, bearing the burdens. You know, if I can bear, the universe wouldn't give me this hard stuff if it didn't think I can handle it. But I actually think about it more as you're not going to get what you want until you indicate that you're ready for more. Until you show that you can handle it, it's not going to happen for you. And one of the biggest examples, this is a reason why I didn't start YouTube, why I didn't start my podcast, is I was really afraid of commentaries, negative commentaries, trolls, things people would say. I never got, in those years, I think I had maybe 1 or 2 troll comments. I got what I could handle, but I didn't have growth either, not at the level I wanted. So it's getting yourself in position to show that I can handle this. I can handle this growth. I can handle this community. I can handle this impact. I am signaling to you that I am ready for more. It's the small, tiny aligned steps that show that you are ready and that open the door for bigger opportunities. And I know this is a lot of the mindset aspect, which always relates to entrepreneurship, but one of the biggest things is I really believe in breaking the growth playbook, because if you're an online business or you're selling online, the biggest thing that we're told again and again is that you need to show up all the time, answer your engagement, your messages, your comments, spend 2 hours doing XYZ. Like, it's exhausting, but that is the playbook that we are given. And so it's very hard to let that go, especially when you see people being successful in the growth playbook that everyone says to do. But you know what else is like that? Corporate world. Corporate world is like that. If you look back decades ago, what was the one thing that everyone said was the secret to success? It was to scale up in the corporate world and have a steady salary. But you have seen that there are a lot more ways to find your money and your happiness than that corporate ladder. And the same thing goes for the online growth playbook. There are other ways for you to create your community and grow, besides the constant hustling and creating stuff that no one sees. Now, I really I get so frustrated about this because I think about how many years I did it for. I also think about a lot of the impact I was having was not there. So even though I would be creating stuff online all the time on all the platforms, nothing was giving me this sense of actually changing people's lives. Of course, if they worked with me, I felt that way, but it didn't have the meaningfulness that I was trying to have. And this is where the small decision, when I started my podcast, I felt like that. I felt like I'm connecting to people. I felt like what I'm creating is making a difference. And I also saw a different way to grow, because something that is so fundamental to business, but I don't think we talk a lot about, is that you need some model of distribution. And social media is not a distribution model, it is an amplifier. So your distribution model is what brings people into your world. But the thing with social media is that it can take what you've created and it can multiply how many people come in. It can multiply how many people see what you do, but it can't be the only source. You need something that is yours. So it can be a blog, it can be YouTube even, it can be your podcast, it can be all three of those, but you need to have something first before the amplifier, because it's almost like we're trying to skip a step when we're only focusing on the hustle, content creation, constantly making comments, following people, DMing. That mode, it's exhausting. And for me, what I found is that when I shifted this and I challenged that mode of growth and said, okay, how do I actually want my business to be? I was able to step back, get 80% of my clients from my show. This is Feel Good Naked when I was in wellness, not be online all the time, because my message was selling for me and I was still having the impact. So I really think for your mental and emotional health and the health of your business, you need something that is going to make a difference like that. The biggest thing that I would say, and this is a very hard thing, not everybody's ready to hear it, is choose purpose over hustle. Have the courage to do things differently, to grow a business that's about impact, not just sales, because that is where the real transformation is going to happen for your community and for you. Something else that comes up when we talk about these small actions, because now you're probably feeling a little inspired, a little fired up, right? But you're also feeling like, well, I'm not ready and I feel a little uncertain and I want it to be perfect. There have been people who I've talked to, and I'm going to give this example just because we've been talking about it, who want to start a show and intend to start a show, but they're thinking about all the things that need to be perfect first. The following needs to be there. My setup needs to be perfect. It makes me laugh because honestly, when I started my podcast, the one that I grew to a top 200 rank, the one that went from 149 downloads to hundreds of thousands, when I started that podcast, I started it in my pajamas, in my bedroom, wearing my glasses, a tiny little Rode mic, which I was using at the time when I was recording fitness videos. And there were many times I recorded episodes from a closet because I needed the sound out, or from under a sheet. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about being ready. If I would have waited to be ready, I would have started now, 4 years later. And in those 4 years, what would I have lost by not starting? I wouldn't have gotten all the guests I've gotten. I don't think I would have had the growth I would have had, because I would have never met the audiences of each guest that came on my show. I would have never had the PR opportunities that have come my way. If I had waited to be ready, I would have been too late. So it's just a reminder, if you're thinking about, I need everything to be perfect, because it won't be. We don't want to be vulnerable. We feel very nervous about sharing anything deeper inside of us, about sharing the honesty of how our journey is going. If you think about it, especially if you're just growing or you're pivoting, when people who are not entrepreneurs ask you how it's going in your family or your friends, do you want to tell them the truth? It's hard. That's why I started this podcast, because I think a lot of us don't have an outlet to be real about what's not working in our business, about what we're doubting, about where we're struggling. And I have had enough conversations now with entrepreneurs to see that that's not a struggle that's just for the beginner. That's someone too who's making 7-8 figures. That person is still also thinking a lot of these same things. And we can't talk about it because we're supposed to show that we're successful. That's hard to be open about the conversations you have. It's hard to share a piece of yourself that hundreds to thousands of people might hear. I know. When I started my very first podcast episode, I thought, you know what? I'm going to nip this in the bud and I'm going to talk about one of the most vulnerable things I can to just get it out there. And that was about how I struggled with body image, and how that shifted for me. And I even called that episode a nickname that I was so embarrassed about growing up, because if you're going to get burned, you might as well start big anyway. It's not saying that it's going to happen that way. For most of us, when we're starting something new, there's not going to be thousands of people that will listen to you. There's going to be a handful, and most of the ones who really believe and love you. So it's also this case of, okay, you're afraid to be vulnerable, but you can do it in a way where you slowly open up and get accustomed to it. It becomes normal for you. When I'm speaking now to so many people on this show, it doesn't bother me, because I started with speaking to 149 of them who were mostly my friends. and friends and family are people I knew. So I think just choose your medium. Obviously, if you share something on social media, there is the potential that that goes viral and lots of people see it. But if you share it on your blog or you share it on a podcast, you can start with a small group of people and you can open up slower. The biggest thing now is that your authenticity is your superpower. It's what makes people trust you. It's what makes a community follow you, is feeling like you are real, you are not filtered, you are completely authentic in what you say. And you need to find a medium that you can do that in. It's very important because people need to see that, okay, this is a person who I relate to. They will not relate to the perfectly polished version of you, not in this time of the world anymore. Now, lastly, what if it doesn't work? What if the small, tiny choice you make doesn't work? Let's be real. The biggest, scariest thought people have that you can have is what if I try this and it doesn't work? It's natural to fear failure, but the truth is that you cannot grow if you don't start. That's the simplest thing. When I first started my podcast, I was really afraid because there are millions of podcasts out there. There's just over 4 million now. At the time, there were probably three and a half. And I thought, who's going to listen? Who's going to listen to this? But the thing about fear is when you look at your fear and you actually do the research about the fear that you have, like let's say you want to start something and you have this immediate fear of it won't work. When you dig deeper into it, you can see how it will. So the more I researched on shows before I started mine, I saw like now, today, there's 546 million podcast listeners. There's 4 million shows. And I talk about how half of them are active. Another 25% have no strategy. And there's 546 million listeners. Like supply demand, right? There is very little supply for a lot of demand. And so I was able to look at my choice and say, okay, the audience is there waiting. I just got to find a way to tap into that. Me being afraid that no one is going to listen is not going to take me there. I need to do something. And the thing is that I think what makes it hardest for all of us, myself included, I've struggled with this, is you have to completely divorce yourself from the outcome. You can have the goal in mind, but you have to really just do the process, do the small action, follow through. And then if it doesn't work, you look at the process. You don't judge yourself as the thing that was wrong. You look at the strategy because it's not you, it's the way that you're implementing. And I think that really takes away some of the fear of what if it won't work. I want to reiterate, say again, the power of small, slow burner moves. The biggest shifts in your life, your relationships, your business, they do not come from giant leaps. They don't come from overnight lucky transformations. They come from small, aligned moves that signal to the world, I am ready for more. I'm ready for expansion. So think about what is yours. Now, if you've been listening to this and your slow burner move is, I want to start a podcast, I'm giving you a sign. It's time to share your story. It's time to build your community and become the thought leader you are meant to be. Do not wait to be that person first and then start it. You will become that person as you take this action. And if you are ready for support in that, Podcast Alchemy is going to guide you through. This is where I'm going to take you so that you launch a show that's not just another task, but is a platform that grows your business, grows you, connects you, amplifies your message. So if you want to join Podcast Alchemy and you want to start 2025 with this show, go to her first 3 years or look in the show notes, look at Start a Podcast and join me. Come. And if you hear this episode a little late and you miss it, you miss the opening, you miss one of those spots, join the waitlist. I'll be opening it up again sometime in 2025. It will be a little bit different how it's structured. So now is really good if you can. Now, thank you so much for listening. Please take your slow burner action move. And I want you to message me. Find me on Instagram, Sade Royale. You'll also see it written in the show notes if you're like, how does she even write her name? Tell me what your slow burner move is. And I will see you in the next episode and hopefully inside Podcast Alchemy. Thank you so much for listening. Now, as you know, Podcast Alchemy is open Monday, October 14th until we hit the 20 spots or until October 18th, the Friday. So if you hear this, you want in, go to her first 3 years to get the details. You will see that there is a section called Start a Podcast. Check it out, look at it there. Because if your slow burner move is to start a show or build a community, get your voice out there, challenge yourself, take that step. I'll see you in the next one.